This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute professional advice. We make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy, completeness, or applicability of the content. Hi, everybody. We wanted to do a little update, and because last night, Tuesday night, the presentation that SJAX is giving at the NSE meeting came out online, and so we wanted to give some commentary on that. So, Michael, what do we think about this presentation?
Well, I mean, I think that I'll call him Uncle Matt. I think Uncle Matt is going to be the professor, and he's going to help the council members understand how they've depicted this timeline, right? Because if you look at their presentation, it's basically 10 pages, and they're using a graphic charting kind of platform by which it's highly color coded. They list all the recommendations, and then they show horizontal bars that run through the recommendation and on a timeline as to where they are, whether it's Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4, so that you can track all of these. And then they tell you what the status is, and then everything's color coded. And they use diamonds and circles and stars and different colors, and then the colors will indicate the team responsibility. I'm looking at it right now. Light blue is shelter, medical is light orange, animal control field is black, administration is red. So this is all mapped out. And my experience with the NSE committee is they never do their homework. They never really prepare. Their staff probably takes a look at this, but my guess is they'll come into this meeting and Matt Lesh will spend a lot of time just kind of illustrating how they're presenting this timeline and where they are in the implementation process. Personally, I wouldn't have done it this way. I don't think any company in Silicon Valley would have done it this way. I think that it would have been much easier to shorten this up and then come back, in August for another presentation. But they've thrown it all together in this one 10-page presentation. And so they show what was due in March, the three recommendations, recommendation 5, 7, and 10. And then they kind of show how they went about completing those recommendations or examples of. And then they go to June, they show what's due in June, and then the June progress on basically 16 items, and what they've done there. And then, of course, December is where everything is backloaded. There's a ton of items in December, like 40 items for December. I think the thing that really kind of jumps out to me and some of our colleagues that we speak to is the current facility use. Who's using the facility? Because HSSV uses this facility twice a week, given that their place had a fire. And that fire was a lot more devastating than I think people know. I think, as you know, of the county commission that you're on, the chief medical officer from HSSV didn't show up a lot for your own meetings, and she was the chairwoman, right?
And now she's resigned. Yeah.
Right. So they've got their hands full and trying to continue with medical care and the whole deal. So they set up shop at SJAX in the front clinic where Dr. Chad used to perform his surgeries. But looking at the way they present this, it's not clear. just where SJAC's staff is, where the medical staff is, and what they're doing. Um, and so they also talk about, then they show all these vendors, that they're using to try and help facilitate TNR, spay neuter, contracts with SNP Bus, Nine Lives, Humane Societies, and HSSV. And they go
Mhm.
back and they look at the last 3 years from January 1st to April 30th. And they show a table, cats, dogs, and other, and they've shown a progression of higher total numbers, of spay neuter. But what's missing here, and it's the 800-pound gorilla in the living room, is what are SJAC's numbers?
Mhm.
What are your in-house numbers for the vets on staff? And if I'm not mistaken, they currently have 4 full-time vets. So what is it that they're doing? Where are their surgical numbers that we can
Right.
use to get an overall total? Because they just show the numbers, the data from contracts with outside vendors.
And in the proposed budget, they're wanting to appropriate more money for outside vendors, but meanwhile, what surgeries are they doing? What are the in-house vets doing? Right.
We don't know. And to date, I've never seen a city council member, any city council member, whether they're on NSE or the full council, ever ask that question. How many vets do you have? And what percentage of time do they spend doing, one, health checks, two, spay neuter, three, major surgeries,
Mm.
four, uh, you know, uh,
Training, or I don't know what else. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cut and dried, but no one has ever asked that question. So it's like this big, like I said, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room regarding the allocation of medical resources. And that's the medical director's job. That's Dr. Cather. And we know that there have been concerns with Dr. Cather that she really enjoys doing complicated 4 and 5 hour surgeries, um, like removing gallstones from help me here. What's the dog that gets gallstones all
Like
the time?
I don't know, like a,
Some kind of terrier or
yeah, sure. Or like,
uh but it just seems like the spay neuter capacity here for 4 full-time vets is terribly limited. And
yeah.
somebody needs to ask this question on Thursday. Now, along with this December focus is also low-cost public spay neuter.
Mhm.
So they again show what the facility use is. They say Mondays, HSSV is there. They're also there on Fridays. They might have a part-time vet on Tuesdays. SJAX is manning the facility on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And there's no vet coverage on the weekends, which I think is a big mistake. You got to
Right.
have you got to have some, at least part-time coverage on a weekend.
Yeah, right now they transfer any emergencies over to MedVet
Right.
on the
And they're
weekend.
spending astronomical amounts of money at MedVet. And I know
And
that this
plus,
is,
they're using an officer to run the animal over there when they could be doing other stuff too.
yeah, it's a tremendous waste of resources. And I know this is a pet peeve with Matt Lesh because he knows that they get bent over the barrel because MedVet charges so much. But
Hmm.
I have friends in the community that give out grants, set up appointments for um, the unhoused, the homeless, the low-income
Hmm.
families. And she never uses MedVet, never,
No,
because there are much more low-cost options than
you
that.
only
In
want to
fact,
go there if you have a true emergency. Yeah.
I mean, isn't Veg like, I don't want to say they're next door, but they're right down the way
Right down the
there.
highway. Yeah, there are
Yeah,
a few exits up the highway at Bay 80. Yeah.
and they're nowhere near the price of MedVet. So MedVet is And that's just laziness. That's pure laziness. And somebody on the city council, if they've got their thinking cap on, needs to ask that question. Why do you send everything out to MedVet when it's the most expensive emergency clinic on the block?
Right.
So we get this schedule of facility use, and then they tell us that during June, they're going to have five appointments a week, five for low-cost public spay neuter. In July, they're going to bump that up to 10. 10. 1, 0. And in August, they're going to get up to 15
And I
appointments
just,
per week.
this is ridiculous because when I worked there, and then we did have the two full, we had Osterman and Tyson and some part-time vets, but we used to, it was a busy day if we had like as many as 20 public spay neuter appointments. And then we did it 4 days a week. And now this is like their big numbers.
I mean, please, this is an insult. I mean, and the thing is I will bet a lot of money that the NSE committee will be thrilled with this. They'll be like, wow, hey, this is great. You're offering low-cost public spay neuter again. We haven't had this for 5 years. 5 appointments a week?
There's going to be months that people are waiting to get this done. And meanwhile, their animals get pregnant or whatever.
How is this going to be even remotely effective? Look, several years ago, I got I don't want to say her name, but we got a noted South Bay veterinarian who's literally a rock star in the business. And she donated her time. And I set this up with Matt Cano, the former public works director, who was there before Matt Lesh. And she said, I will commit 1 day a week to doing spay neuter. And we'll do it at a off-site, at a spay neuter van, a surgical van, and parked at a rescue. And one of the cat volunteers, Jennifer Flick, handled all of the transport down and back. Everything was seamless. And they were done on Mondays. And the first Monday, I believe this vet did 42 spay neuters in one run. And then about 2 weeks later, she did 56.
Yeah.
56, one vet. Okay. In 8 hours, that's one every 8.5 minutes.
Right.
So, and then of course, she didn't want to deal with SJAX anymore because they had a veterinarian named Dr. Butler who had a hissy fit, and Dr. Butler was only 2 years removed from medical school and terribly green. And, anyway, she's no longer there. But,
Yeah.
And then once again, someone who's trying to help the shelter is driven away, right? That's the other side of this. But my point is 5 appointments a week in June, 10 a week in July, 15 a week in August. Are you kidding me?
I mean, I'm glad they're doing something, but it seems like they could be more ambitious with this. I mean, if they're already going to have the clinic open, why not do more in a day? I mean, if somebody can come in and do 40 or 50, can't they shoot for 10, 20 in a day, maybe?
Yeah, look, you could hire a contract vet, could come in and use the front of the clinic and be paid $1,500 coming in 1 day a week, right? You pay them a premium, $1,500. That's the going rate. It's not 700 or 800. Sorry, Minicat Town. It's 1,500, 12 to 1,500. That's what people like Dr. Sharon Osterman get. That's what 9 Lives pays out.
Yeah.
So why would you not do that and get 40 plus animals altered for $1,500? I mean, that's nearly 2,100 in a year on an annualized basis for, $75,000 roughly, whatever. It just, again, what are these vets doing? If you have 4 full-time vets, are they just not proficient in spay neuter? I
And
don't know.
it occurs to me they could recoup all that money too. If they charge about what county is charging now for their clinic, they could recoup that money that they pay a vet to come in and do this easily. They could recoup that money. So it's not like it's a money thing either. Yeah.
They're just, it's like what's his face in Wall Street. He's just, throwing bills out, off of his yacht. And then I want one more thing we should mention here is, so they're also going to offer 5 appointments per week for unhoused residents. Right? Whether
I
or
think
not
they've
that,
already I think they've already been doing that through Kim McIntyre. She goes out in the encampments and
yeah,
brings dogs in, mostly dogs, to get fixed. And she's got appointments with them already. So I don't think this is a new thing, but I don't know.
they'll have to explain this, and
Yeah,
what happens if not all these appointments get filled by unhoused residents, right? Then what do you do?
right.
So there's a lot of clarification that Matt Lesh will have to explain,
Mhm.
but I again, I just don't see anyone on this NSE committee raising these questions. They're not
Maybe we'll be
informed.
pleasantly surprised. I don't know, but I doubt it.
I'm not holding my breath. I'm not. We've watched this committee repeatedly take a back seat and let Matt Lesh and Angel Rios basically snow everybody.
Hmm.
And I
But
know
now we got these fancy charts that,
I know there are people out there that like the shelter and they're big supporters of the shelter. And I know there are trappers out there that will never say a bad thing about the shelter. They don't care about the care of animals inside the shelter. They only care about getting their TNR appointments.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So I know that if they're listening, they're going to have a problem with me saying, being as critical as I am, and as critical as you and I have both been about the
Mhm.
shelter. But come on, 5 appointments a week? How
I
does this
hope.
move the needle? I mean, this is a joke. I I I I, I had some correspondence with a trapper who was in those stakeholders meetings that we had in 2023 with Angel Rios, and she says, "I've given up on SJACs. I, I'm going to HSSV and I'm booking my appointments there for all healthy, TNRs, because she says, I'm apparently not a fan of theirs because she's questioned their record keeping and their documentation of meds
Yeah.
being administered. Well, she wouldn't be the first person to ever question that. I mean, if you've ever looked at their medical records, you're kind of looking like, wait a minute, were these ever given, or did you
Well, and
just,
we've heard from cat volunteers that uh, they'll come in and put the medication in the cat's food and just walk away. And if the cat's not feeling well, I mean, it's getting medication, and it doesn't eat all of it, then it's not actually getting its meds. So that record keeping is suspect because we don't know if the cat actually took the medication. So, I mean, that's just one example. So their record keeping lacks uh,
look,
reliability, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So this wouldn't be the first time, but they don't, instead of, see, again, it's this us versus them mentality. And that's their culture. That's the culture they created. We're all trying to help them. We're all
Yeah.
trying to point things out that are all highly valid and legitimate. I mean, I don't just make this stuff up. I mean, I can document most of what
Yeah.
I'm saying here, what we're
Mhm.
saying here.
Yeah.
What other people have been saying, I mean, we've been saying the same thing for years. And, you know, it would be one thing if this shelter was running uh, much better and had like an efficiency and an effective rate that was, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was up at, 8, and it was an 8, 8.5
Mhm.
at least. And, for us to be constantly criticizing at 8 or 8.5, we would
That'd be
lose
different.
we would lose credibility, right?
Oh, and that reminds me, I noticed in the this is another, it kind of goes to the quality too. If you in the budget, there's a something of like where they ask people to rate the shelter, and it's been low, under 50% for most of the years that they mentioned in there, which says something to you. I mean, obviously they're not performing, so they're open to criticism. I mean, people are
Yeah,
not happy.
well, look, when you see the live release rate for cats collapse to as low as 73% in 2023,
Mm,
and that was with, restricted intake, um, not doing the volumes that, we had seen previously.
mm, mhm.
And I think, um, your point again too is very valid. We have a little table. I've sent it around to a couple of people. I even sent it to Mackenzie Mossing earlier this morning in the mayor's office. I said, hey, look, here's your budget. Here's your budget going back to fiscal year 2018, 2019. It was $8 million. $8 million back then. And as you said, they were doing TNR and low cost public spay neuter almost every day a week
Mhm,
with much higher intake volumes.
mhm.
They weren't restricting intake like they are now. So, and yet this budget now, the budget that's been proposed or forecast for 25, 26, it's pushing $17.2 million.
Mhm.
That's a far cry from 8.0.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Again, what is the taxpayer getting? And, you know, where are the cats? Every day I look at Pet Compass to see the cats that are listed that are available for adoption, and it's a handful.
Right.
And we're in May. We're in the month of May. I point
Yep.
this out to Jennifer McGuire. She doesn't care.
Just goes right past, and she says to talk to Matt Lesh about it. And
Yeah, everything gets deferred, referred to Matt Lesh. Um, and so uh it's sad. It's really sad. So anyway, getting back to these recommendations, I think that we're going to see Professor Matt, spend a lot of time explaining and dazzling everybody with this
yeah.
grid, this chart, and highlighting that, hey, some of these recommendations in December we're already doing right now. And
Hmm.
he's going to show that his team is working hard and yada yada yada. um, but there's some stuff missing here, and
Right.
I'm really suspect. I'm really skeptical that anyone on the NSE committee cares enough to ask the right questions, especially about their spay neuter capacity and what it is that these 4 full-time vets do all day.
Right. Well, and while we're on that, before we go, we have people asking what should they bring up when they do their public comment or when they write their email. And so maybe we could give a rundown, maybe do like 5 things that are hot topics right now that we should bring up in public comment.
I think, one of the top ones for me is somebody needs to request the chairman, Peter Ortiz, to bring Matt Lesh back onto the agenda with these
Mhm.
recommendations in August. We
Yes.
can't wait till December,
Right.
right? And go through this, you know, another presentation like this. I
Mm.
mean, it took us 6 months to get here, right? From when the audit was presented in December. And now what? We're going to wait another 7 months?
Yeah, no, not acceptable.
So for
Definitely.
me, that's the number one thing. I've mentioned this to Ortiz. Hopefully he makes this recommendation or puts it up for a vote. He should put it up for a vote.
I would say one thing I would bring up is the expanding TNR appointments to 5 days a week. I think that's super important. And 1 day a week is not cutting it because, for one thing, people didn't have any TNR for so long. Now there's a backlog of cats out there in the community. So they need to expand that to 5 days a week. Even if they have to do it gradually, I think that's essential. They need to do that.
I mean, and that's what Angel Rios said. He said that should be our priority for next year. And he said that back in December. We should have TNR 5 days a week at a minimum, quote unquote, at a minimum. That's what he said. So somebody needs to hold him to that. Why are we not having that? Another 6 months go by, another 6 months go by, and it doesn't look from this presentation like that's even in the cards.
Right.
So, and what you'll see Angel do, and this is what he does, is he lets the entire meeting unwind, and then at the very end, he gets in his 2 cents.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what he says. But from what I've seen from him, it's just all talk. It's just all talk. Because he's made pledges before and there's been no action. And he did say back on December 12th, and that was Deb Davis's last meeting as chairwoman of NSE, and he said, we have to make TNR at a minimum 5 days a week. So where is that? Because it's not anywhere in this presentation.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay, so what is the next item that people should bring up?
Again, the spay neuter capacity. You know, what is it that these 4 full-time vets are doing? What's taking up most of their time? I mean, these aren't gotcha questions. I think the community just really needs to know. They're basic questions. You know, so that's right up there. And then, of course, the flavor of the month or the flavor of the first quarter is where are the adoptable cats? Just where are they?
Yeah.
Those would be my top 3.
Okay. And I thought of one. I've been speaking with some cat volunteers that have been working with Kiska ICAR to try and get some things changed. And one thing that they were wanting to have is more foster kitten trainings. They're having like 1 a month, I think, and they need to have more and talk about ringworm and talk about, you know, bottle babies, different topics. I think part of their commitment was to do more outreach about kitten season, and they've done minimal. So it would be a really good idea for them to do more trainings and more outreach because they constantly need to foster. They're euthanizing bottle babies. And so this outreach is essential. And I mean, it's already kitten season, so they need to be doing it like now, like yesterday. So that would be something I would suggest people.
Have you, from your contacts, have you gotten any, has there been any feedback back from Kiska? Like, is she, I would imagine she's open to it, but is there anything in the works or?
I will see if I can share some stuff with you personally, but from what I've seen, she's actually been working on some of these things. It's impressive. It's been slow going, and she's been sometimes slow to respond, but she's been working on some things. So that's good news. I'm impressed that she's taking the volunteers seriously. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that there's a lot of room to improve on that area.
I mean, look, if you don't have volunteers stepping up and consistently supporting a high volume shelter like this, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And,
they depend on the volunteers, and they depend on the rescues, or they should be. And,
yeah, that's the only way you're going to reach your 90%, live release rate.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't just adopt everything out, right? And so actually, and so you need rescue and you need foster and things like that. And it does seem like there's this new strategy. We're going to return a lot of animals to the field, on average 200 a month,
but you can't return neonatal kittens, so you still.
So you definitely need an army of fosters. And we used to have overnighters. We had a handful of overnighters that did an amazing
Basically, yeah.
job.
Mhm.
And, two of them were on our board at Kittens First. And, man, they probably did thousands of,
Oh, yeah.
neonates. And
Even
it didn't cost the city a dime.
nope. I mean, they might provide formula, but I mean, that's pennies, really. So,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. So those would be my three questions, basically. Where are the cats? This has been going on for 4 months now. What really is your spay neuter capacity in-house? What is it that your vets, what is it that they're struggling with that takes up so much of their time that they're unable to do spay neuter? Or are they just not talented when it comes to being proficient with spay neuter?
Right.
Right. And let's see, what was the other one that I had? And then, hey, let's come back in August for an update,
Right. Right.
right? Somebody needs to, you know, send an email to their city council member on the NSE and say, I need these people. I need Matt Lesh to come back in August. I don't want we shouldn't wait
Right.
till December, another 7
No,
months.
no way.
No.
And my
So
my two would be TNR 5 days a week. And what was the other thing? Um,
improved foster outreach.
and oh, right, and improve foster and kitten season outreach. So those are my two, and I also agree with yours. But that gives us a total of 5 things that we think that
Yeah, we
people
just did 5 here on this
right?
episode.
And we could go on.
Yeah, but we just did 5 really important areas to look at,
Mhm.
and yet they want to spend all this money on outside vendors and blah 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 blah. But it's kind of like, well, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to spend so much on Snip Bus, Nine Lives, Valley Humane? Why do you have to spend so much on MedVet? They forecasted. I mean, I've seen their budget on this. They forecasted $400,000 in ACS medical expenses, uh, uh, and they blew through it. They went to 652,000.
And it seems like they could solve a lot of this issue if they had vets on the weekend. That would fix a lot of the problems with outsourcing for emergencies, for one thing. If they had a part
Right, that
timer
would
who would
cut
come
cut
in on the
down on
weekends
that.
or
Right, that would cut down on your reliance on MedVet.
yeah.
So at the heart of this is it comes down to leadership, right? I have no idea what Jay Tirado is doing. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's still out on medical leave. They're saying that Kiska is the director of operations,
Hmm.
but does she really sit down with the medical director and say, look, this is our policy. This is what we're going to do. I have a feeling Cather is just calling all the shots, and that's
Yeah.
why we're in this situation,
I've
right?
seen some emails from Jay about policy, so he's there somewhere. But there's also been some from Cather that are pretty major subjects, and I don't know how much collaboration is going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there seems to be an over reliance on these outside vendors,
Hmm.
um, for basic services, like spay neuter, and it's mind boggling to me that they're going to offer 5 appointments a week starting next month, and
It's laughable.
it is laughable. And what'll be even worse is if we watch the council members, how they react to this news. They just sit there and go, okay,
No,
sounds
all
good to
right.
me. Check. We got to check this meeting off, but let's go to the next agenda item. And I think that's what's going to happen. That's my bet. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But
I mean, Deb Davis has impressed us in the past by suddenly asking questions that we didn't expect. So, I mean, maybe Ortiz or Cohen, I don't know. Maybe they'll ask some questions.
I think it's a big day for Ortiz. I really do. I mean, he's the chairman of this committee. It's all his now. He gets to dictate what he believes is important. And I think it's a big day for Pete Ortiz, with no question.
Maybe he can step up. That would be awesome.
That would be great. It would be great. I mean, look, we've been in touch with his office for a long time. I've gotten to know his chief of staff, Brisa Moreno, pretty well. But again, there is this tendency that I've noticed at the city of San Jose to disappear for most of the year. And then when there's a meeting, when SJAX is on the agenda, all of a sudden, like literally the morning of the day that it's on the agenda, all of a sudden they reach out to you and go, "Hey, Mike, do you have any questions do you want to ask?" I'm like, "Where have you been for 6 months?"
I've been sending you these questions.
And I guess this is just the way they run the city. And I think that's one of the reasons why this city is as challenged as it is. So
yeah.
Anyway, we'll leave it for there.
Yep.
There, but tune in on Thursday. Show up at the meeting. It starts at 1:30, and go up to the podium, get your 2 minutes. Try and be concise. That 2 minutes, for anybody who's been at the podium, that 2 minutes goes like 30 seconds.
Right.
So,
well, I recommend practicing your speech and get it down to 2 minutes or even 1 minute, because sometimes we get limited more, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it'll be 2. But again, it's a big day for Peter Ortiz. I want to see some of these city council members actually engaged, actually actively asking questions that, don't amount to anything more than looking at the back of a cookie baking box where it's telling you directions of 3/4 of a cup of milk and water, and it's already there. If you had read the report, if you had done your homework, you shouldn't be asking those questions. You should be asking other questions.
Right.
So, again, I would be pleasantly surprised if we could see some leadership on Thursday.
Well, maybe we will be pleasantly surprised. I guess we'll find out. I'm going to wrap this up for now, and we will be back with a recap, maybe some commentary on the meeting after Thursday. Bye, everybody.